My name is Emily Barnum. I'm one of the counselors here. I have students with last names H through M, and if I can just introduce the other counselors, I know you know us by now, hopefully. This is Mrs. Mazzola. She has students N through Z, and then Ms. Sturma, students A through G. Thank you for bringing up the microphone. The microphone was actually less for us in terms of amplifying our voices and more for the TV and the output on the news station. So the idea is that we will be broadcasting this, we're hoping Friday, could be as early as Friday, but we will be handing out, sending out the link at some point as soon as we know when it's live. So it will be broadcast on the cable station and will also be on the YouTube station. So that's another just thing to note, that as you sit here, if you're really uncomfortable being on television on the YouTube station, that you're more than welcome to sit in the back. But feel free to ask questions at any point. This information session is designed to be interactive. I think like the biggest thing that we want to convey to you tonight is that we are a team. We are going to work on this together. There's absolutely no reason to be stressed about the nitty-gritty of the application process. We are already very busy in our office meeting with students individually. Many of you have already seen us either at the end of last year or already this year. The students have been awesome. We hosted our first ever boot camp, which has been great for both the counselors and the students. So we offered during periods, every free period, so blocks 1 through 7 and an after school session, the opportunity for students to come see us in the computer lab where we logged on with them to the Common App and some of their other application platforms and went on to Naviance, and we helped them kind of get through the nuts and bolts of the application. I think something that's always striking to us as counselors is that sometimes we take for granted the things that we think they know or don't know. And I think whenever we sit with students in that kind of environment, and you probably feel the same way when you're at home with them, is that sometimes they just don't know the things that we think that they know, whether that's what does it really mean to have a bachelor's degree, or what does it really mean, the difference between a rural school and a suburban school. So there are things that to have a grown-up be around, particularly a counselor, and in some cases a parent, it can be really helpful. So the boot camp was great. It was very well attended. We had over 30% of our students come during the day and to the first after-school session. So we decided we will be offering 2 additional after-school sessions for students that didn't have an opportunity to participate in those sessions. So other house cleaning things I did just want to mention, this is great turnout. So nice to see all of your faces. If there weren't enough handouts, we will, of course, be sending an email blast with a summary, the link to the TV broadcast, and all of the handouts. So your students also got the senior application checklist, so they should have a copy of that. And we also did send them an email blast with those handouts as well. So they have that if you're looking for it at home tonight. So we're going to kind of split up the presentation tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of the overall application process, kind of the nitty-gritty of it. So some of the things that we covered in the boot camp with the students was the Common App. So just as a quick refresher, the Common Application is exactly what it sounds. It is the most kind of common form of an application platform that we tend to see with our students. So you can find it on commonapp.org. There's a whole bunch of things that are in there on the Common App. Most of it's sort of tedious and boring for the students. It's a bunch of biographical information. It has a number of different tabs. The students are asked about their family. Again, why it's kind of nice to have a grown-up around, whether it's a counselor or a parent, to kind of coach them through. So it has that, and then there are a couple things that we helped them with at the boot camp that tend to trip them up or cause them to have some additional questions. One of those things is matching with Naviance. So Naviance, as I was explaining earlier to a parent who was sitting here, it's confusing with all the different online platforms. Naviance, if you think about it, is a hub for managing all of the applications. So whether it's through the Common App or through the institutional applications or the coalition, which I'll talk about later, or any other application platform, Naviance houses all of that information. So the students kind of go there to look at all of the lists of schools that they're applying to, look at the counselor questionnaire, which they fill out, which we'll talk about later. The teacher questionnaire has all those career and interest inventories. So all of that is housed through Naviance, but that's kind of like their managing tool for their applications. It has nothing to do really with the actual application itself. The actual applications are either found on Common App or through the institutions themselves, or through the coalition. So some of the things that were really important to do with the students was start to fill out the common application, but also to match them. So the students had to sign a waiver. It's called the FERPA Waiver. It accomplishes two things. When you sign the waiver, you say, yes, I'm allowing my school to send my academic records, my transcript, and any other academic information related to my profile. And then it also asks them to identify whether they will waive the right to see their recommendation information or not. And so the general recommendation there, and it's not up to us to make that decision for them, it's up to the students. If they decide to waive their right to see their recommendation information, that kind of says to the admissions committee that they are we're trying to protect the integrity of the process, that there's really nothing to hide, that they would like their teachers to be as honest and forthcoming about their academic record, their behavior, their integrity, their character, and all of that stuff. If they choose not to waive their right to see their recommendation, it tends to send a little bit of a yellow flag to the admissions committee, like there's something to hide. It's also really up to the school, the college where the student ends up, whether or not they're sharing that information. So it's truly up to the student to make that decision, but we would kind of say it's probably just easier to waive your right. So the students will sign the FERPA waiver. It is found under the Common App, and again, it sounds very confusing, but this is something that we've done with the students, and you can do it at home with them. Once they sign that waiver, then they go and enter their Common App username and password on Naviance, and then those two sites are linked, which means for them that if anytime they add a school to the Common App or on Naviance, it's one and the same. They're sort of interchangeable. They get updated at the same time. Does that make sense? Okay, great. So that's one of the things that, in terms of the Common App, that tends to trip up the students. So that's been really helpful to kind of do that. Other things on the, sorry about that. On the Common App is the course information. So again, it tends to be kind of tedious. The students are going to be looking at their transcript and adding all of their information. Something that is on the Common App that it asks you whether your courses, if applicable, are accelerated, honors, or AP. All of our classes are college prep here at this high school, so we're recommending to students that if you have a class that's titled Advanced College Prep on any of your classes, that you're going to pick that accelerated version. So it may not in their eyes look accelerated, but to the college admissions committee, it's an accelerated option for them. And then obviously honors and AP are sort of self-explanatory for the students. That's really important information. Following that, under the education section, is the honors section. So that doesn't mean for the students whether or not you're taking any honors classes. They're looking for if you've been a recipient of any particular honors or awards during high school. So for example, if your son or daughter had received the Academic Excellence in Algebra 1 award freshman year, that would be an appropriate place to put that. Or a National Honor Society, or receiving an award for the National Spanish exam, for example, that would be a great place to keep that information. So that's, again, kind of thinking about the big picture. We want to make sure that we're presenting the students in the most positive light and giving them as many opportunities to show how awesome they are, and that's one of those opportunities. There is a self-report section. Some schools are requiring that students self-report their grades. So that's, again, something that we've been working with them on. They can put in their final average grades for freshman, sophomore year, and junior year, and then they're looking for quarterly grades, and we can have that available to the students. Some schools, like I said, are requiring that. Some schools aren't. Some schools are even saying you can go to this other website for purely just reporting your academic record, and they'll use that instead of the transcript. But we're recommending to students, we'll be sending the transcript no matter what. So that's something, again, that's kind of been tripping students up in terms of the application process itself. And then there's the activity section. So we talk a lot since freshman year about being involved and what that really means. And this is finally their opportunity on the Common App to show what they've been up to. There are 10 fields available to the students, so they can only list 10 activities. We would recommend really thinking about which activities they're listing. They want to have the most important things at the top. Again, we've talked about this, at length. Colleges are looking not so much for the menu of things and a smattering of things that they've accomplished throughout the years. One walk for hunger here. I did, this sport for 1 year here. They're looking for deep commitment and involvement and longevity in terms of the extracurricular activities. And so if a student has been doing something for 12 years, for example, that's probably going to be at the top or should live at the top. Also, if a student is thinking about an engineering program or nursing program or something particular that they feel that they have, that is their goal, and we want to highlight this in the application, those kinds of things, those kinds of extracurricular activities, even though they might not have been doing them for 12 years, should also live in that activities section. So if there's any confusion about that, like we always would, of course, recommend that the students come to see us, and we are also more than happy to look at the Common App with them if they'd like us to before they send it out, and so we're happy to take a look at that activities list. But it's really important that they take that opportunity to put everything in there and really consider that bigger overall theme of their application. And take the opportunity to put the 10 things in. And it's okay if your son or daughter has done 3 or 4 really key, crucial things in their life, and maybe that includes childcare for a younger sibling or a grandparent. That would be excellent information to put in there. Again, students should come see their guidance counselor if they have questions or concerns about how to position some of their activities. And then, many of you have probably seen the additional information section, and there's lots of questions about what to do about that section. And we, again, would say this is an open field for students to take the opportunity to choose something that it won't be covered elsewhere in the application that they could potentially talk about. I was back and forth with a student earlier on this week, and she was wondering kind of what to put in there, but she has been on a number of service trips. She's traveled extensively in Belize. She had a foreign exchange student at her home for a summer, and so, in talking to her, we had sort of come to the conclusion that, it looks to me that she's already met the criteria for global competency certificate, and these are things that she's already really interested in, but hasn't really had an opportunity to talk about in the rest of her application. This would be the perfect place to do that. It doesn't have to be something that's an extracurricular activity or a certificate, for example. It could be a student that wants to explain a blip in their transcript. Maybe he or she had a concussion in their sophomore year. Maybe there was a death in the family. Maybe their parents went through a divorce, or there was a big move, or maybe they came to Swampscott High School as a 9th grader. Those are the types of things that could live in that section. Again, really kind of paints the child as a 3-dimensional person and not just a number. This is really kind of where the student comes alive in the application, and are these various sections. And I know Ms. Mazzola and Ms. Sturmer will be talking about the essay and other ways that they can do that. But these are little areas that they can kind of show who they are. There are other places in the common application where we'll ask, and this is again something as young adults and as adolescents that I think tends to trip them up. It asks, would you like to participate in Scholar Snap? Would you like to receive information from Thrive or Strive or any of these other organizations? These are organizations that students are more than welcome to sign up for. We just caution students to make sure that they're really understanding what they're putting their email addresses in for. Certainly, the Scholar Snap seems to be a great organization. They're taking all the student data and sort of streamlining the process for scholarships, which is excellent. But it's one more thing for the students to manage, so to be cognizant of what they're signing up for and kind of how it's going to inundate their email inbox and college application process. We just want them to be well informed about the choices that they're making. So again, if you hear them asking you, should I be signing up for this organization or that, we say, you choose whatever you want. Of course, you can also always go back to those organizations if you aren't sure while you're filling out the Common App. You can also kind of go back to those organizations and sign up for them again. We talked a little bit about some of the pieces of the Common App. Like I said, the Common App is the most common application, certainly for our students, but there are other ways that students are required to apply for college, other application platforms. Many institutions will have their very own application. Some colleges will say, we'll give you an application waiver if you fill out our own institutional application. That is perfectly fine as long as the students tell us that. Otherwise, it's listed in Naviance under the Common App. But this just requires the students to do another application. So understanding that, the students will then generally just go to the admissions page of that particular school, sign up for a login and a password. They go and create an account, and they're going to go and do a very similar process just as they've done with the Common App. There will be a bunch of biographical information, family information, education information. There may tend to be some short essays. There may tend to be longer essays. So those are some things to consider, that some institutions will also have their own application. The majority of schools are accepting the common application, but this is just something else to pay attention to. Does anybody have any questions? Again, like definitely raise your hand at any point, and remind me to paraphrase the question because they don't hear you on the television. Yes. Oh, sorry, I'll come back to you.
So even on the Common App, schools have their own questions, like short answer questions that the students will have to address.
Yep.
In addition to
Right, that's a great question, or comment. So she was just sort of mentioning that even though there is the common application, there are supplemental questions. Many schools will also offer these supplemental questions. Some are very brief. Sometimes it's just about financial aid or residential life, but many times there are also supplemental essays. We talked a little bit about supplemental essays later on. So those supplemental essays could be, why are you choosing UVM? Or where's Waldo? Or what is your favorite ice cream flavor and why? Or who is your role model? Thank you for bringing that up. So the essays Mrs. Mazzola is going to talk about again, but yeah, so the Common App is like the main application that all schools receive, and then some schools will also say, I'd like to know more information about XYZ, and then you'll also find that on the dashboard of the website, of Common App website. Does that make sense? Wait, you had a question?
So you said Naviance is the hub to the process, so is that where they tell you what schools they're applying to? So they know where to send transcripts and things of that nature?
Yes, exactly. So the question is, so Naviance is the hub, and is that how sort of we as the counselors know where they're applying to and where to send transcripts to? And the answer is yes. So it's actually really the hub for us as well, because we can see everything. We actually never get access to the Common App unless the students sit down and share with us. So for us, yes, we will be able to see all of the list of schools that the students are applying to. We can see, is it a Common App school? Is it a school that receives electronic submissions? Or is it like Georgetown, for example, that says they accept snail mail information? So I would say if you see that little stamp icon, and it's very, very, very small number of schools that will accept snail mail information, generally it is some sort of hybrid between snail mail and electronic documents. And you would find that by going, again, to the admissions page of that particular school and seeing what they require of the students. But it is, the Naviance for us is where we see all of the schools. We see if the teacher has sent the students recommendations. You'll see, as a parent, if a transcript has been requested by your son or daughter and also sent by our office. And while I'm just kind of talking about that, as you can see, there are a number of sort of moving parts in this process. And someone asked a great question before our presentation started about timing. So everything kind of moves independent of one another. So let's say, for example, your son or daughter is applying early action or early decision to a school. The student goes, let's say, pretend it's on Common App, will fill out the Common Application, will do all of the writing, will do the supplemental essays or whatever is required of him or her, and as soon as he or she is done with his portion of the application, submitting the application is perfectly fine. Your sons and daughters do not need to wait for us. They do not need to wait for the teachers. They do not need to wait for their SAT or ACT scores to arrive, which we'll talk about in a little bit. All of these pieces of the application can go independent of one another. The moment an admissions committee receives a piece of information on a student, they start a file. So at any point is fine. So that was something I wanted to mention. So the students are really responsible for their portion of the application and meeting that deadline for them. The teachers have their own login to Naviance, and because they're connected to Common App and in the other schools, they will be able to send everything electronically, unless of course has one of those snail mail icons, but again, it's like a handful of schools. So the teachers will be able to send their stuff independently, and the counselors do send their stuff independent of the student's application as well. So just to clarify again what the counselor is responsible for, when a student submits a request for a transcript, that means that that starts our process of thinking about the recommendation letter and managing our time between now and November 1. We will send a copy of our school profile, which is sort of a summary of our school, how our students have done on the SAT and the AP test, for example, how big our schools are, how many students graduated last year, how many went on to a 2- and 4-year school, and some other things. So that's the school profile. In addition to that, we send the student's transcript, so the colleges will be able to evaluate the student transcript against all of the academic and other opportunities that were available to them at the high school. So we send those two pieces of information. We also send what they call a secondary school report, which is sort of a brief summary of the student's overall academic performance. There are some rating scales there on motivation, integrity, character, that kind of thing. It asks us what are the first words that come to mind when you think about the student, and we take that very seriously. So it's like a kind of a quick snapshot of the student. That's called the secondary school report. And then we also will send our recommendation letter. And so we really do take those very seriously. We care very much about your sons and daughters. We've, at this point, spent many years with them. And for us, like, this is the best part, is going through the process of figuring out what they're about to do next. We end up having multiple meetings with the students. We see them in big groups. We see them in small groups. We see them coming in and out of the office for multiple different questions. It is really fun for us. And again, just want to reassure you that this will all be fine. It will be great. We are a team. We will work together to make sure that you guys aren't feeling like this is a stressful and overwhelming process. We'll take care of your kids and make sure that they're not falling off anyone's radar here. Yes.
Is it the guidance office that puts together the secondary school report, or who has input in that?
It's just the guidance counselors. So the schools, essentially, it's a form. It's just like a teacher form. So the teachers will send their evaluation, their recommendation, their actual letter that they write, but they're also asked for like a quick summary of the student in the class, and they'll ask very similar things about their progress in class, their motivation, their leadership, their contribution to discussion, that kind of thing. But it's a form that's prepared for us that we complete. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like I saw some more hands. Yes.
Is that waiver, was it called the FERPA waiver?
FERPA. It stands for Family Educational Rights Protection Act.
And that's what the student signs with their individual counselor for all their transcripts to be released?
Yep. So the question is about the FERPA waiver. So the FERPA waiver lives on the Common App. You can find it. You have to complete at least the part of the education section that says, I go to Swampscott High School. Once that section is complete, then you click on at least one of the colleges in the Common App. Let's say, for example, it's UNH. You click on UNH, and it pops up under one of the questions. It says, release and authorization. And you only do that once. And again, the point is so Common App and Naviance are matched. Yes.
I guess that kind of answers my question. If the state schools don't require the Common App, they have their own, but then that means that you still have to fill out the Common App even if you may or may not even use it, because otherwise we can't get your transcripts sent. So no matter what, you have to do the Common App even though you may not be using it to apply to school.
If a school is not on the Common App, we are able to physically send the transcript to a school that receives electronic submissions.
But as long as you go on Naviance and request it to you, you don't have to worry about going on the Common App then.
As long as you're not applying to a Common App school, that is correct. Yeah. So to be clear, though, I think you mentioned something about state schools.
Have their own, right, so they don't use the Common App.
No, they do.
Some.
Yep, some of them do.
Oh, but that's their own.
Some do.
Some do. I'm sorry, that's buzzing. Sorry about that. I think I would be shocked if a student had a list of schools that had more than 3 schools and none were Common App.
No, Salem State doesn't.
Yeah.
There are other state schools that do. Salem State's not the only state school.
Should they also set up a profile on the school's website for their clients?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. So,
So if a school is on this Common App,
yep,
let's say your client is 8 schools, 7 of them are on the Common App.
yep.
Should the child still set up a profile on that school's website and to start that process? Does the school need to know directly through their website that the student's applying, or is it enough to just go to the Common App?
If the school, are you suggesting if the school accepts either Common App or their own institutional application, should you also fill out information in the institutional application? Am I understanding that right?
Yes, or if some schools can set the Common App and don't have any supplemental information, do they
Yep.
still need to set up?
Nope, not if they accept Common App and that's easier for you. It's certainly easier for us, and it's certainly easier for the student. In some cases, if they have an institutional application, we get an email from a different organization that sends us an additional secondary school report form and an additional place for us to upload the transcript and the school profile. It's not a huge deal for us, but it's more work for the students too. So, I don't know what just happened. Sorry, I'm yelling at you. Lots of things happening down here. So no, the answer is if he or she chooses to apply through the Common App, the schools really don't care. If it were if it were for like a fee waiver, for example, it makes absolutely zero difference to us. It would just be helpful for us to know because it will show on the Common App under Naviance that it might not have been sent. Or it will show on the student's portal that it hasn't been sent because it's not on the Common App, if that makes sense.
So this is a follow-up question. So each school has a checklist of items that need to be received. If the student completes their application on the Common App and lets you know that the information needs to be sent,
Yeah.
that checklist for that school, how is that accessible to students to make sure everything is received on time?
Good question. So the question is, if there's a checklist of things that need to be received by each admissions committee, how are you as parents and students able to know that all of those boxes have been checked? Did I repeat that right? Okay. So for every school, the students will then get a username and login to go into an online portal, and it's there. Again, like we don't have access to those portals. It's there that those kinds of checklists are listed, and as they receive information, the school checks off those boxes. I will say, thank you for bringing this up, something that comes up every year is you see on Naviance that we've sent the transcript, but the school is still showing on the portal that the transcript has not been received. This happens all the time. This is a processing issue. If you see that it's been sent on Naviance, we assure you that it's been sent through Naviance and that the transcript has been sent. Generally speaking, if it's been a couple days, and we totally appreciate there's a lot of anxiety around this process, especially as deadlines are looming and or have recently passed, and it still says a transcript hasn't been received, we recommend to the students, certainly come and see us if you have questions, and we can just double check and make sure on our end, but certainly pick up the phone and call the school. The student should be more than comfortable at that point just saying, you know, I notice on my portal that it looks like my transcript hasn't been received, but I just talked to my counselor, and you know, she has mentioned that it was sent back on October 16th. Can you just double check that for me? And oftentimes it's just sitting there and it hasn't been pulled from their site. I know that wasn't a direct question or an answer for you, but did I answer your original question? Okay, great. Yes.
What is the lead time for the teachers' recommendations to be electronically transmitted to the colleges, assuming that the student has asked already for the recommendation, but how much lead time do they need to electronically make that?
That's a great question. So the question is, how much lead time do the teachers really need? And we're going to cover this in a little bit, but the short answer is that the student should already have had a conversation with the teacher, and as a follow-up to an in-person conversation, they actually go and send a request through Naviance, which we will talk about. Again, that's sort of just like a linking function. It says to the teacher, you know, I'm following up on the conversation we had. Will you please write my recommendation letter? And it allows the teacher's portal to be attached to the student's portal so they can go in and push send. So the teachers, but we'll cover that again in a minute. Any other questions before we move on? I didn't mean to cut you short, but I promise we'll cover it in a little bit more depth. Okay. The coalition application, it's a new form of application. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The intention last year was to have it launched. It's another application platform. Some schools, like Maryland, is using it exclusively. If they're using it exclusively, that's fine. We still will be sending everything through our Naviance and portals. So everything will be received electronically on their end. We won't be going on to Coalition and asking all of our teachers to go set up another profile under Coalition application. The schools have agreed that they will still accept the information through the sort of old-fashioned way, if you will. So I won't say too much more about that. But we will say, I know Mrs. Walsh brought up the question about the Common App versus the institutional application. The schools really don't have a preference. So certainly for the students, if it's easier and less time-consuming and less stressful to just do that one application is perfectly fine and great and acceptable and fine for the students. Okay.
All right. So moving on to everyone's favorite topic, standardized test scores. So at this point, hopefully everyone has it. Not you guys, your sons or daughters have at least taken the SAT or ACT, hopefully at least once. If not, hopefully they're just done with the whole process. But obviously the test scores are a key factor in the admission decisions. And so right now, October is the next testing date. We do have some students taking maybe subject tests at this point in the game. Subject tests are also known as SAT-2s. The subject tests are more for the kids that are applying to the highly selective schools, if you will, or the Ivies. They're schools, those are some of the schools that require it. So we tell the students that this is on them to do the research and figure out if it's a requirement of the schools that they are looking into, because some schools will require it. In lieu of the subject test or the SAT-2s, some schools will take the ACT with the writing. So that's also something for them to look into and do the research on. So right now, I do have some students that are taking the SAT, after doing some research over the summer, they realized I have to take the subject tests. So they are taking them in October. So that's something maybe you guys want to have a conversation with your sons and daughters in regards to the subject tests. Sending the official scores. This has to be done by you guys, probably by you guys, because you do need a credit card to send them officially through the organizations to which they tested. So for SATs or subject tests, it will be through College Board, and if it was the ACT, it will be through act.org. So sending the scores officially, we say to give that up to 6 weeks. Even though you're just sending them electronically and it might be a touch of a button, it does take a lot of time to get them organized and in the files of each student to each college. So sending them as soon as you know what schools they're applying to, the sooner the better. Any questions on that?
You can send them before you even do their.
Yes, so you can send the scores. Her question was, can you send the scores before you even apply with the Common App? And the answer is yes. So if you know the schools that your son or daughter are applying to, you can send those scores right away.
If they take it multiple times and they want to submit the highest score, is there a example to say hit the send button on the score before you know they are?
That's a tough question. So her question was, if you've taken them multiple times and then you're about to take them again, but you don't know the scores yet, do you still hit send? It depends on when you're applying. So are you thinking of applying early action? So I guess that would be a question, an individual question with your counselor based on the prior SAT results. Yes?
Is the SAT subject test the same thing as super scoring?
No, so the SAT subject tests are a completely separate test that they take on a Saturday. They're 1-hour examinations in certain subjects. So they choose the subjects that they want to take. It could be a Math 1, a Math 2, a Chemistry, a Biology, a Physics, a US History, English, Literature, and you can take up to 3 on one given Saturday. The reason for those subject tests are a lot of schools, for instance, Tufts University is very specific in their requirements. So for example, engineering, their engineering program wants, they will tell you their requirements. They want at least 1 math and a physics or a chemistry. So some schools are very specific with the requirement of having it and then the requirement for a particular major and the subjects that they're looking for that subject test. Sure.
So does it matter how many times a person takes the SAT? So do they take that into account when they're looking at the scores?
So her question is, does it matter how many times you take the SAT and do they take that into account? I would say we always say to our students, you really should not take the SAT more than 3 times because the data shows that your scores don't go up. And admission counselors have said to us, if they see that the student is taking it over and over and over again, it doesn't look good. Would you agree?
Yeah. We don't really feel like it's necessary for the students to torture themselves on a Saturday. You're not speaking into the mic. Sorry. I'm just reiterating what Julie just said. We think that taking it more than 3 times is not fruitful. for the students. Their scores aren't going to go up that much, if at all. So unless they're doing something drastically different, I guess. For example, if you take the test the first time and you've done zero preparation and you have a certain score that you're not happy with, and on the second go around you maybe read a little bit before and you're preparing in some way for the math section, let's say, for example, that's a struggle for you, and you do a little bit better, and then by the third time around you've taken the class and you've really committed to them, that would be one sort of different answer to that or approach. But we would say, we've said this before, that you shouldn't go into these exams having never prepared for them. This is part, as you can see, a critical piece of the application process, so to take it really seriously and do prepare for that exam. I know we have a bunch of questions.
Julie, will you recover super
Yeah.
part 2 of that one?
So part 2 of the question back there on the super scoring, just to go over that, almost every college will super score nowadays. Basically what that is, if you submit in every college too, on College Board for SATs, they will tell you what each college's requirements are for submitting SAT scores. So that's something that you should look up as well. As far as super scoring goes, it's taking the best score of each area that for critical reading and math. So if you submit all of your test dates that you took, the colleges will take the best of your critical reading and your critical math, and they will super score it. So they're not out to hurt any students and saying, nope, we're only taking this test date because that's what you submitted on this date and you didn't do well on this date. So they want to do what's best for the student, and so almost all colleges, not every, but almost all colleges will super score, and they'll take the best of each section.
If a school accepts either the SAT or the SAT, is there a disadvantage of not sending both?
No. So his question was, is there a disadvantage to sending the SAT or ACT if they took both, correct?
Yeah, if the school says we'll take either.
If they take either, is there a disadvantage of sending both? And the answer is no, you can send both. Of not sending both. There is not, no. In the back?
So if you're applying for early action, say November 1st, and sign up for the SATs on October 7th, they're not going to get there in time. Is that correct?
So
Can you still apply or no?
this is a question that, this is a topic that we talked to the juniors about last year. This year's seniors, last year as juniors. And then we talked to them about it again this year. We said to them, we hope that you have already at least taken one sitting of an SAT or an ACT. And then it's up to them to ask the admission counselors to the schools that they are applying to for early action to see if they are willing to take the late test scores of October. If they're not going to get there on time, will they allow them to come in late? Some schools will allow it and some schools won't. So it's up to them to be reaching out to the schools they're applying early action to see if they're willing to accept them come late. They'll be released to them before November 1st, but like I said, when you want to send them electronically, they won't be there before November 1st. So if on that Common App, one of the questions on Common App is, did you take the SATs? You say yes. What did you get the first time around? You might want to report what you got the first time around. And then the question is, are you taking them again? You can say, yes, October 7th. And they'll be anticipating another score coming in. So you kind of cover your basis on the Common App, and if you've already reached out to the schools that you're wanting to apply early action to say, will you accept my score? It's coming in a little bit after the deadline. If they say yes, then you're good. If they say no, then you have to decide whether you want to wait for regular decision or go with your first score. Does that make sense?
When you say reach out to them, just pick up the phone and call them.
You can pick up the phone and call them or send an email. Yep. Yes, so this is a good point Ms. Sato was making. This is everything that we're talking about when we say reach out to admissions. We're not talking about you guys as parents, we're actually talking about the students. So this is their journey, their responsibility, and trust us when we say, I know it's so hard and you guys want to just take the reins and make sure that, you know, everything is done and it's done perfectly, and I completely understand that. And if you want to be right there beside them, definitely, but when we sit down with admission counselors and they come through our door 2 or 3 times a day, they tell us they want to hear from the students. They're the ones going to college. They're the ones that this is their process. They're taking the next step. They don't want to hear from mom and dad. They want to hear from the student. They want to know that the student has the skill set to pick up the phone and make that phone call, or has the skill set to send a proper email and ask a simple question. So please allow them to, you know, have the drive and the motivation to make these next steps. Okay, question?
Would you just delineate a little between the ACT and the SAT? Is one better than the other?
Oh, that's a little late in the game to answer.
No, I'm just curious because we've had this discussion in the household, and I'm just really curious.
Okay.
I've been online looking at it, but nobody really says anything definitive.
No.
No difference.
Is one better than the other, ACT or SAT? I can't answer that. It's very individualized for each student. There are some differences, and I know we covered that last year at Junior Parent Night. As far as sending them and receiving them from a college standpoint, absolutely not. The colleges do not care. They just want to see a standardized test score. Or they don't, which comes to my next little bullet. Some schools are test optional, and they have done away with standardized testing because they don't think it's fair anymore, and they are not judging the students by, you know, a standardized test. They're viewing them by, you know, just what they've done academically with a transcript, and, you know, qualitatively with their essay and their extracurricular activities, and by their letters of recommendation. So there are some schools out there that are strictly test optional, and that's the website you can go to if, you know, you feel like, oh, you know, my son or daughter just doesn't test well. They really just didn't get the scores that we thought they were going to get. There are a ton of schools, really strong, selective, highly selective schools out there that are test optional. So please take a look at that if you feel your son or daughter falls into that category. All right, so this is such a hot topic for the kids and sometimes the adults too, the essay. So as Ms. Barnum mentioned, the Common App has that main essay, and they worked on it. Your sons and daughters worked on it over the summer. So this was the first time this assignment was implemented over the summer through the English department, and we were very, very lucky and fortunate to have that be accomplished. And I hope it continues because it's a good starting point for them to have something accomplished and something to work with. And not put off until, oh, I'm applying November 1st, October 25th, here I go, starting my essay, or January 1st, regular decision, I'm going to start it December 26th. So at least they have something, and that's what we reminded them the other day at Senior Assembly. It is a starting point. It's not a finished product by any means, because we all know probably some of them did maybe do it the night before school started. However, at least they did turn it into something, and we appreciate that, and it is a starting point for them. The essay for Common App, it stems from 6 prompts, so they had to choose one of the 6 prompts and write, you know, a thorough essay answering not only the prompt, but then complete this, you know, masterpiece that they are turning in to the colleges, telling them about themselves, sharing a story, showing a story. And we say a lot to the students about this piece, that it really is about showcasing themselves. At this point, you know, they are an SAT or an ACT number, and they are a GPA, and they're a rank. And at this point now, it's the time to, you know, market yourself, sell yourself, become alive on paper. tell a story, use your 5 senses to become something, someone. And, we've started to we've done this a lot. We read these essays. We encourage them to share their essays with us. It's part of our senior meeting with them. And so we've read a lot of these essays. We talk to the admission counselors about what their thoughts are on essays. And we see a lot of it's Friday night, sweat's dripping off my head, it's the bottom of the 9th, the bases are loaded. It's just like, we know, we get it. Oh my goodness, you're gonna strike them out. We got it. And the admission counselors feel the same way. Or it's my sophomore year. I thought for sure I was gonna make a varsity soccer team, and I didn't, and all my friends did, and I just don't know how I ever survived that. It was the worst experience of my life. And I get it. We all get it. It probably was the worst experience at that point. But given the big picture and in the big world and what some of these people are actually, applicants are going to be going through and what they're up against, not making varsity soccer is probably, not the worst thing in the whole entire world. And so we really want to emphasize, be careful what you're writing about and choose wisely. And we understand you might not have the most tragic event, but it's not about tragedy when you're writing your college essay. It could be something as little as, being an only child and how that has, changed your life. And it could be about being from New England and enjoying the 4 seasons. It could be about the one from a couple years ago that the admissions counselors talked about was how one of the kids was obsessed with Costco. So there's ways to go about your essay, whether it's funny and quirky because that's the person you are, and if you're not, then don't try to be. We say be who you are. If there is an event that you have unfortunately gone through that might be tragic, don't make the tragedy be the focal point. Make that speak about it, and then talk about the positive stuff that came, what you overcame, and how you developed, and how you grew, and end it on a positive note. Nothing should be drawn out in negative in your college essay. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions about the Common App essay? Okay. So then, as Ms. Barnum already talked about too, we had a question about the supplements. So within the Common App, when you start adding your schools on the dashboard, you will click on them, and they might ask you to add a couple of more pieces of information called a supplement. It might be a couple more essays. It might be just a few questions. So those supplements really should be specific. They are specific to that college, and when you answer them, they really should be specific to that college, where you couldn't copy and paste that answer and put it into another college. It really should be defined by that school, where what we say to the kids, go back into that school's website, pull things from the college tour that you went on, and make sure you can implement any of that information into those supplements so that they know this kid likes it here. This kid did their research. This kid, came to this school and knows everything about X, Y, and Z school. And if it's like a fun and quirky one, and that's who you are, showcase that. For example, today I sat down with a student, and one of the supplements were, list all of the print and publication and websites that you go to, your favorite ones. Just list them out. And I said to the student, so here they are. They're trying to get to know you. They want to know not only is this a fit for you, but are you a fit for them? And they're trying to get to know you as a person. So they want to know, what websites do you go to? So not only are you here to showcase who you are as a person, as a kid, you are a kid. Show them that you're a kid. If you go to 17.com, put down 17.com. If you, watch TED Talks, which I hope, if you do, she's a very intelligent person, show your intellect side as well. She's applying to a very highly selective school, so this is kind of the information she was giving me. So we had this conversation. You want to put down this side of what you're looking at, but also don't forget to be a kid as well and show them that side too. Any questions about the supplements?
Yes, there's a question over there.
So some of the schools will have optional supplements, but would you say that even when they're optional, they should be followed?
So the question is, if there's anything optional, such as a supplement, should they still be doing it? And I would say yes, because anytime there's an opportunity to sell yourself to the school and let them know anything else about you, absolutely take advantage of that. So, anymore? Okay. So institutional applications may also have additional essays that are not in line with the Common App essay, so they might have to do additional essays through institutional applications. So, for example, Clemson University is not on Common App, so they might have their own essay to do. So you might have to, if you're doing their own application, you might have to do another essay with them. Okay, I think I'm done.
You can do it.
Hi. Okay, so we have a few more slides, and then I know our financial aid person is waiting in the wings, so we will finish up here soon. My job is to talk to you about connecting with teachers and counselors, so back to the kind of nuts and bolts of how we do this. So as part of your child's application, we recommend that they ask 2 teachers at Swampscott High School to write for them. As juniors, we did talk to them about this, so in an ideal world, they would have approached those teachers in the spring of their junior year. But if not, it is not too late. Your students should definitely be thinking about 2 people in this building. Other than the counselors, we will automatically write a counselor recommendation. But the teachers, you want to pick 2 people in the building that you have connected with along the way. It doesn't need to be somebody that you got straight A's. You want to pick somebody where your student has connected with that teacher. Maybe they've struggled, they've gone after school. You want the teacher to be able to talk about your child in the classroom, their strengths, have they grown? A lot of our seniors may have had a teacher freshman year and now they have that same teacher senior year. That's really nice when the teacher can talk about the growth. So in order to prepare your teachers to write the most strong recommendation they can, your child should provide them with some information. A lot of teachers have their own way of doing things. They require a form to fill out. They require a meeting. But we have on Naviance a teacher questionnaire, which is only about 5 questions, but that's something that we ask the students to fill out. In case the teachers don't have their own process, they can defer to the Naviance teacher questionnaire. And also in Naviance, there's an opportunity to do a resume, which the counselors can access when we're writing our letter, the teachers can access it in Naviance when they're writing theirs, and then later on in senior year, we're going to be doing scholarships, which a resume is required. So when we have our meetings with the seniors, we do say you need to do a resume as part of this process, and that's in Naviance on the About Me tab, and you just click resume. It's very user-friendly. The template is already there for you. You just have to type in the information. So you should be giving that to your teacher in anticipation that they will use that when they write. To Diana's question earlier about the timing for this teacher recommendation, so if your student has not approached a teacher yet, that should happen immediately. If they have approached at the end of junior year, they should be reapproaching them now in person to just touch base, make sure the teacher's still on board, and make a connection. And then once that has happened, they can go into Naviance and do the official invitation, which is under colleges I'm applying to. There's a link called Letters of Recommendation, and we walk the kids through this when we have our senior meeting, but that is a process where they will pick the teacher from a drop-down menu and tell the teacher which colleges they want them to send the letter to, and then they click Submit Request, and the teachers automatically get an email. And that's all that your child has to do. The teachers take it from there. So out of respect for a November 1st deadline, that should happen at least a few weeks in advance so the teacher can write the letter and upload it and get it to the school by the deadline.
Can you talk about the parent response form?
Yes. Also in Naviance, so all of you also as parents have your own Naviance account. By a raise of hands, does anybody know that? So very few, okay. So parents have their own Naviance account. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we can set you up with that. When you log in as the parent in your own account, there will be a form there called the parent response form. And that is a confidential form where you're just basically talking to the counselor. So there's questions about your child where we want to get to know your perspective, how you think your child has grown, how you would describe your child. And you're basically typing it to us. The counselor is the only one reading that. But honestly, when we write our letters, we really find that useful to get a glimpse into how the parents view their child. So that's just an extra piece. It's totally optional, but we would really appreciate your help if you would fill that out for us. So I think, any questions about the teacher recommendations?
If you add colleges later in the process, and they check it off, it will continue to follow through.
Great question. So the question is about if you have a list in Naviance of colleges and the teachers have sent their recommendation, but then you and your child decide to add more schools, how does that happen? So the answer is it does not happen automatically. So if you have 5 schools in your colleges I'm applying to list, you invite your teacher, the teacher uploads the letter. The teacher is only able to access the schools that are currently on the list at the time of sending, so they send the 5. If a child adds number 6 and 7, the teacher won't automatically be notified of that, so the student must reapproach the teacher, send an email, go in person, and ask the teacher and say, oh, hey, I added 2 more schools, can you please send my letter? Okay, so now the counselor. So we are the other piece. We automatically will write for your child, but in order to do that, we need to have a meeting with them first. So those are fast and furiously happening in our office. Each day we are meeting with multiple kids. So the required senior meeting in the fall, obviously if your child is going early action or early decision, we would like to have that meeting immediately right now. If your child is more of a regular decision candidate, which is more January 1st, January 15th, we do have a little bit more time, so we can wait until October, early November to meet with your child, but those that are ready to go for November 1st, a meeting really should be happening as soon as possible. So we said to the seniors in their assembly the other day, we do look to them to reach out to us, so please stop by, send us an email, let us know if you have a study hall. That's the perfect time for us to pull you. Otherwise, we are definitely staying after school every day, and potentially, if necessary, we will pull them from PE or something like that. And then, yes, please.
Prior to the decision or early action, is it true that you still won't find out about any merit financial aid until the spring?
Well, Matt's coming in to talk about financial aid in a bit, but I think it differs by college. Sometimes they will follow up with a financial, so FAFSA, Matt's gonna talk all about this, but the FAFSA is the federal form. If you fill that, it opens up next week on October 1st. If you fill that out immediately and send it to the school, when the school's making your admissions decision, they might very well follow up with your financial aid package soon after that. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Matt will cover all
Especially
that.
though, if you're applying ED, it would make sense. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that if you're applying ED, that is early decision, you're making that binding commitment to the school, and finances are of any concern whatsoever. You're going to want to probably know that up front if the financial aid award package is coming at the same time or roughly at the same time as the admissions decision. So I would say that's fine if the parent calls the financial aid office. That's perfectly appropriate. The student can call too, but to make sure that you get the information that you really need, I would definitely recommend calling the financial aid office. And we would recommend, and Matt will talk about this too, if you have any questions about financial aid at any point, or things change, or if there's been changes in a household or a job or what have you, especially using the prior year tax information, feel free to call the individual financial aid offices. That's what they're there for.
Okay, and then I think this is our last slide. We have one more about timing. So in the guidance office, and we showed the students this the other day. So if your child has their list of schools in the colleges I'm applying to, and you're ready, you feel like you're ready for the counselor to send the transcript, there's a button in Naviance called Transcript Request. So we are not going to know where your child wants us to send their materials until this step has been taken. So they need to go in and click Transcript Request, check off all of their schools, and click submit. Then the counselors, we have a separate portal where we go in and we're notified, okay, Susie wants me to send it to these 5 schools, and that's how we proceed. So that's important to do. We ask students to do that 3 weeks in advance. So for a November 1st deadline, that would mean by October 10th, they should be requesting the transcripts in Naviance. And then for those students who are going early decision, which means you pick the one school that is a binding commitment should you be accepted, there is a contract agreement that needs to be filled out. So in Common App, you will be prompted to electronically sign that yes, you are promising if you are admitted, you will attend. And then on the counselor end, we have a piece where we also have to sign something saying we've had the conversation with the student, they understand the implications, and everybody's in agreement. And
Quick question. So for regular application, does the Swampscott send both first and second quarter grades or in aggregate both?
Okay, great question. So for regular decision, what grades do we send? So we are going to be sending what grades are available by that deadline. So for a November 1st deadline, no grades are available. So it's basically we show the 3 years of final grades and then what classes are being taken senior year. However, there's no grades available. For a January 1st deadline, the quarter 1 is available, so that will go. And then some schools are even as late as like February 15th, March 1st, so the quarter 2 would be available. However, we are automatically required to send a mid-year report, which means quarter 1 and quarter 2 are sent. No midterm exams are on there, so it's not like their report card that you all print from Aspen. They don't see the midterm exams. So if your child has a bad exam week, that's okay. It's quarter 1 and quarter 2 that are being reported. Sorry, I was going to say something.
You might have been thinking about the optional transcript. So if a student applies early action, early decision, where the quarter 1 grades are not yet available, but let's say, for example, they had an exceptionally strong quarter 1, or maybe they just continued on a strong trajectory, and they've continued to do really well quarter 1, they can request an optional transcript of us, and we have one opportunity during the school year to send an optional transcript. So let's say November 17th rolls around, and the student's very nervous about what that imminent admissions decision might be, then they can certainly have a conversation with us and request a transcript that's optional. So we'd be happy to do that too. It's not required. Some schools will ask us for it, and then in that case we'll send it, but we won't necessarily send quarter 1 grades.
So you send
Whatever.
the transcript as soon as they request it on Naviance, or you look at the fact that they're applying regular decision and wait till the January 1st,
Right. So the question is, when a student requests a transcript, do we send it immediately or do we pay attention to the deadline? I usually pay attention to the deadline, where if a student does it now but they're applying regular decision, I usually would wait. However, I've been saying to my students, can you make it easier for me and only request your transcript closer to, like, if you're applying regular decision, please don't request your transcript until after quarter 1 grades are available, which just makes it easier on me, but we try to pay attention anyway to what makes sense.
And that is part of their the boxes that they check as they go through and request the transcripts. They have to identify when their deadlines are, so it will show on our end the transcript has been requested and they've selected EA or RD for regular decision. If they inadvertently don't pay attention to that detail and have RD in there, that doesn't, and we have never had a meeting with that student because they haven't come to us, we assume that those students are going to be applying regular decision. We're not chasing down students that have a regular decision transcript request on there and have yet to meet with us. So if 1029 rolls around and they say, well, did you get my transcript request? I'm applying early to 7 schools. We won't have that, and that will be at a disadvantage for the student. The transcript request 3-week deadline has less to do with the actual transcript sending and more to do with giving us the time to review the resume and the counselor questionnaire and the parent response, when we really give them the time that they deserve for us to write an excellent letter. It takes us about an hour per student, and we take it very seriously. Like I said, we want it to be the most interesting, like, beautifully painted picture of every student, and that's very individualized and isn't templated for any student ever in a year. So it's really for them that 3-week deadline exists.
Just briefly, it was my experience 2 years ago, one of the things that changed with my daughter, for early action, so when you apply November 1st, automatically, when the first quarter grades come, you're going to automatically
That's, we won't automatically send quarter one grades, but if Emily was, as Emily was saying, if you had a fantastic quarter one and you feel you need to show them that, we can optionally send that. But if you apply early action, the first grades they will see for senior year would be the mid-year report at the end of January. So you might already have your decision by then. So that's why you have to strategize. If senior year grades are important for your child to prove to the colleges they can do it, then don't apply early action. They would have had to really have a fantastic transcript for the first 3 years, or if they have if they have any type of GPA and you feel it's going to stay the same, early action is fine with you. But if you've had a rough couple years and you really need to prove yourself senior year, then it would behoove you to wait.
And of course, Mrs. Mazzola saying behind that if the school requests it of us, we send it, but we do not automatically send it unless the student requests it or the schools request it of us.
And lastly, the last point on our bullets is important for some of you. IEPs and 504s, that's not something that we automatically announce to colleges. It's up to the family's decision whether, if your child's on an IEP or a 504, that's confidential information. That's not something we as the counselor will be revealing to them. Your student may want to write an essay about it or talk about that in the additional information, or you do not need to let that information be known during the admissions process. Once your child is admitted to the school, if you are seeking accommodations, you then go to the Office for Student Services, you supply them with your 504 or your IEP, and you talk about what kind of services can be given to your child. However, that is not something that needs to be revealed in the application process if you are not comfortable with that. And that's the family's responsibility to do that or not do that. We really don't cover that. And it won't be in any of our recommendation letters unless I have had a conversation or we have had a conversation with the family, and that's something that you want highlighted in the letter, sure, but otherwise it won't be discussed.
Okay, I'm going to be really quick with our last slide. Matt Carpenter from College Funding Services, and it looks like his crew is here. They're a private organization. We are not endorsing any private organization, one versus another. He's been coming here as long as I've been here, but really since the founding of his agency. The goal is to give you tips and tricks and strategies on how to save money. It's a free educational workshop for you guys. It's an hour well spent. He threatens to stay for much longer, but I promise you he won't. He's funny and engaging for very dry material. It's an awesome presentation. I guarantee you, if you know nothing about financial aid, you will 100% learn something and will be blown away by some of the presentation. So I would say certainly, if you don't know a lot about financial aid, he will kind of cover the 30,000-foot view, but also give you like specific tips and tricks on the actual financial aid application. So that's totally for you guys. Don't feel like you need to stay for that. If you don't want to, you have to get somewhere, or you're starving, or your hair is growing like mine. That's totally fine. We understand. Just we will be refining our scholarship process this year. In years past, the process began in March. We are really hoping to start that process much earlier. So the guidance department is trying to take over that process, and we're hoping to get it all online. So stay tuned for details there. Again, our hope is to really push that back earlier. It is one way where students can access scholarship dollars that are generally local. So that will be something that they hopefully will be able to do online. Also, Naviance houses a very long list of scholarships that come by our desk. So Mrs. Brown kindly puts all of those in there with a specific criteria and deadlines, and she updates that every year. So that's another place to look for scholarships. We tend to recommend to the students, outside of merit aid and institutional money that the students can access, that this kind of scholarship dollar is less competitive because there are fewer students in the pool as compared to, say, for example, a Gatorade scholarship or a Bill Belichick scholarship, for example. So in terms of time and energy and resources, and we know the students really don't have a lot of that extra, especially this year, that is a great place to spend some time in terms of the scholarship stuff. So outside of all the college admissions talk, we realize that we spend a lot of time over 4 years talking about college admissions, and the reality is that about 95% of our students are going on to a 2 or 4 year school. That is certainly not to say that we are excluding the other percentage of the students who aren't going on that path. Like I said, we are personally and professionally invested in your kids, and we adore them and love the senior year, and everyone is really truly on their own path. We want to help them no matter what it is. So the armed forces will come, for example, if your student's interested in the military, we post that on Naviance. We tell the students about those situations and opportunities for them to engage with those organizations. We have North Shore Community College come and do an on-the-spot admission. It's an opportunity for students who might be more reluctant to get that application process started and may want to do the 2-year track, to have that be easier for them to access so they don't have to go to campus, so they can do it right here in our office with our support. We'll print the transcript for them. We'll kind of walk them through what that conversation looks like, and they get an admission decision on the spot, and generally the answer is yes. As long as they have a transcript and a diploma, that answer is yes, but it feels really good for students to hear that and have that up front in November. So there's opportunities. Opportunities like this, we have personal contact information for gap year programs. Many students will be interested in that, or maybe even be thinking about that as they go through the college application process. Our advice to you as parents and students is keep an open mind, and also keep as many options on the table as you possibly can. You may decide that you want to do a gap year. It might be like a seed in your mind at this point, and your student may or may not know that. But we would recommend going through the college application process at the same time and going through the gap year program exploration, or even just sort of working for a year exploration at the same time, going through some form of college application process. So come April or May, they have options on the table, and they're the ones that are able to choose, and not vice versa. So certainly we help. There's a North Shore Career Center that helps students find a first-time job, helps with resume building, helps with interviews. Of course, we'll do all of that too if the students want to access it, but there are local resources that we will help students access beyond the college application process. So we realize that it tends to be really heavy. If you're feeling like you're sitting here and your son or daughter is not on that path, please just have them reach out to us like any other student, and we'll kind of help them navigate whatever path that is. So I think there was one other thing as a reminder. We will be doing the boot camp October 3rd and 5th. It's a Tuesday and Thursday after school. So if your students, you find like they're giving you the eye roll every night when you ask about the Common App or their essay or teacher recommendations, send them our way. We will take them. We love them. We will take care of them, make sure they're on track. Feel free to shoot us an email. Like, I'm worried about Bobby. He doesn't seem to have done anything. Could you please check in on him? We love emails like that. So definitely keep us posted. And then finally, communication is key. A lot of the things that have come up tonight are on our website and on our blog. So we have tended to rely really heavily on that blog. So Johns Hopkins posts effective college essays every year. There was a blog post last year about that. Go check out that link. There's some really cool essays. One of them is about a quesadilla or tortilla or something. Just like Julie was saying, the essay doesn't have to be about tragedy. It can be something fun and light and human. And then what else did we post? About sort of like missions and expectations of the school, and like how to determine fit, how to position yourself as fitting into a college environment that they're trying to build a community of freshmen students there, and kind of how does you position your application so they know that you're a good fit for the school. So there's tons of pieces of advice and tips and tricks on our website and on our blog too, so please take advantage of that. Tell your students to read their emails. We send out email blasts regularly for upcoming events and deadlines and all this stuff, and so we would love it if you would also read our emails and our blog, and the students too. So that was a lot of information. Have any final questions before I hand it over to the fabulous three?
Did you breathe that whole time?
No, I didn't. I will say, it's one of my only weaknesses that I speak really quickly. Any other final questions about college admissions or post-secondary planning in general before we talk about financial aid? Yeah.
You said it's up to the parents to send in the SAT scores?
I'm so glad you brought this up again. So,
It's a credit card, so is there a fee associated?
well, that's a great question. So the question is it a parent responsibility to send the official SAT or ACT scores? It's really a student responsibility, but many students don't have a credit card, so it does require a fee to send for each school. So they will need your credit card information. So you could certainly do it, or you can certainly do it in collaboration with your student. Son or daughter. Yes. Oh, you don't have it on the thing?
No. It's in your email, but in the body, it's probably like.
Yeah, talk.
I'll talk. Are we done? Good. Okay. We don't need the mic. We don't
Do you know, will you ask one of those cute TV students?
have to have the mic. Is this good? Can you guys hear this?
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
want to pull up my
Okay.
work email.
All right. I'm going to ask you to keep questions to the end because we have a hard stop at 10 o'clock, and we're going to need every single minute of it. Just kidding. We're going to try to talk as fast as Emily, if not faster.
These are brutal.
And I know Matt can. I'm Matt Carpenter. It's Matt Frado. This is Jera. She's our intern from Endicott. And so is it all senior parents? So I know? Okay. Some underclassmen? Some, okay. Few go-getters? Yeah. So this is the financial aid piece. Hopefully, does everybody have a copy of the presentation on them? Do we have extra copies of the presentation? Okay, would you mind? Just so you can take them home and you'll have questions, I'm sure. On the first slide of the presentation is our contact information. So if you have questions beyond tonight, you're starting to fill out the FAFSA next week, you get stuck, you forgot to ask something tonight, reach out to us, call us, email us, say, hey, I attended the presentation at Swampscott, I have a question, we will get back to you, we're good about that. But in all seriousness, I want you to ask questions. If you have questions, this is a good forum. We do this all year round. We've been doing it for 12 years. There's really not a question we haven't heard. So I want to talk about the stuff that's important to you guys. If you have a question you haven't, or you'd rather not ask in front of the room, we'll hang around for a bit afterwards. Come on up. We'll get you squared away. And again, if you want to reach out to us after tonight, happy to help out. So we'll have the presentation behind us in a minute here, but I want to get into it nonetheless. So there's two types of financial aid. Okay, there's two broad categories that we can put financial aid or break financial aid into. Okay, one is called merit-based financial aid. Merit-based financial aid is kind of what it sounds like. This is money that's given just based on your student's credentials. Okay, so right now, your sons and your daughters, they're kind of in the throes, I'm sure, of this admissions process, right? Hopefully kind of wrapping up or at least starting those admissions applications. They decide to each of the schools they want to apply to, they send off those admissions applications. Hopefully, at least a percentage of these schools, the admissions counselors are going, hey, listen, we'd love to have them at our school. We want to give them a financial incentive to come here. That's a merit-based financial aid award, okay? Nothing to do with your family's financial situation, only concerned with the student's GPA, SAT, extracurriculars, etc. Okay, a scholarship. All right. Now Matt's going to talk in some details what schools might give us scholarships, how much might they give us, and he's also going to mention the fact, and we talked about not every school does merit-based scholarships, so it's important to know the distinction. Okay. The other type of financial aid is what's called need-based financial aid, and this we'll spend a little bit more time on because it's a little bit more complex. For those of you that have your handouts, okay, that first or the second slide there, the calculation is, and this calculation is important to understand because every single college uses it for every single student. It's kind of one of the few universals in this whole thing. And that's the cost of attendance minus the expected family contribution, or the acronym you see there is the EFC. And the difference between those two figures is your eligibility for what's called need-based financial aid. Okay, so cost of attendance, these are these really scary, kind of intimidating sticker prices of schools. So if I Google right now, what's Boston College? They're gonna be $75,000 next year, okay? Next year's the first year that we're actually gonna have a few dozen schools that are 70,000 plus. Might be the first year that a school hits 80,000, okay? So just kind of insane monopoly money type of deal, right? But the other two figures for most families are more important in dictating how much a school will actually cost that student and how affordable or not affordable a particular school will be. So the expected family contribution, the EFC, is a dollar amount that gets assigned to your son or daughter by the Department of Education, okay, by the federal government, the second you submit the FAFSA. And we'll talk about the FAFSA. That's the financial aid application that every single school requires, okay? So everybody's gonna be doing that form. But anybody ever done a FAFSA before? A few, okay, we got some veterans in here. That's good. But so you may remember, right, the second you submit that form, you to the best of your ability, answer the questions, here's my income, here's my assets, you double check it, hit submit, boom, that dollar amount pops up on the screen, right? You remember that moment? Anybody? You remember what you said? Right? Shit, my computer's broken, right? Like, I knew I was gonna screw this thing up, right? Because I know they're not saying that that's what we can afford each year for school. Not usually a pretty number. But what we want to talk about, what we want to make sure you guys leave here with tonight, is a few things that you can do to manipulate that family contribution down as low as possible, because that's what we want to do. That's kind of the name of the game in need-based financial aid. How can we lower our EFC so we demonstrate in higher eligibility for need? That's the first thing we want to accomplish. Now, how can we identify what colleges meet a high percentage of need? So for example, if we call Boston College 70, and we say that our family contribution, the federal government says our family contribution is 30, so that difference there, our eligibility for need in that scenario is 40,000. Who pays that 40,000? Well, a school like BC, they do. Okay, they meet 100% of need. okay? We gotta come up with our 30, our EFC, but they take care of the difference. So in a perfect world, we would like to apply to schools that if we're eligible for need-based aid, meets a high percentage, or an ideally 100%, because there's a huge range, right? Schools meet 100, and schools meet close to 0, and everything in between. Well done. Look at that. So here we are. So is everybody okay with the terminology at least? And we'll look at some kind of particular examples. And again, like I said, guys, please interrupt us if we have questions. So if we understand it conceptually, we want to do what we can, at least to the extent in which we can control, to get this EFC down as low as it can possibly go. So what are some of the things we can do? Now, everybody's situation is unique. All these schools run their businesses differently. But there's some strategies that we found over the years apply to most families, or at least a decent percentage we get in front of, okay? Now, the first thing is we're getting ready to submit these financial aid applications. They're going to be available this Sunday, September 1st. Okay? They're not accessible until Sunday. But as we start working on these this fall, ideally, by the time we hit submit on these financial aid applications, if we look at that third bullet point there, parent assets versus student assets, the first place that these colleges are going to go after in terms of savings, investments, et cetera, is any money in the kid's name. Okay? Without getting into the complexities of the formula, and again, every school is a little bit different, but one universal is all of them, to different extents, but all of them see money in the kid's name as the low-hanging fruit. Okay, they're saying if this kid's going to school, they're benefiting from the education. If there's money in our name, that should come to us first. Okay, of course they're going to look at money in the parent's name, but not with the same amount of scrutiny as money in the kid's name. That's the first place that they look. So when we have if we have the option, again, by the time we hit submit on the forms, we'd like there to be as little money in the kid's name as possible. Assets, investments, savings, et cetera, are reported in real time, okay? So if you're hearing this now and say, geez, we got $15,000 saved up in the savings account from their first communion, their bar mitzvah, whatever, okay? Is it too late to move it? The answer is no. Or is it too late to add our name onto it as a parent? No, it's not. Because as of when you submit that form is when they want to know the values of those accounts. So you're perfectly within the rules if you made any changes between now and when you submit the forms, okay? Any other questions there? Because yep.
We've got a 529 plan that's in my name, but
Right, so you know what, I'm really happy you asked that question because and again, that's why I want you guys to ask questions, because we're trying to rush tonight, because I would kill myself if I were you guys already sitting down for an hour plus, okay? So, I don't want to skip important stuff, and that would be an example, okay? We audit a lot of parents' financial aid applications that don't work with us, that are wondering, could we have done better, to try to see if we can kind of poke holes. And the most common mistake, by far and away, is that when they're reporting 529 savings and investments, they report it as a student asset, okay? Because that's kind of common knowledge, right? It's for a school, their name's on the statement, you know, their social security's on the statement. It must be a student asset. It's not. You as the parent are the owner of that account. The student is the beneficiary. So if you own a 529, do not include it, okay, as the student's asset. Not only is it incorrect, it'll absolutely kill you from an EFC standpoint. All right, so very, very good question, very important if your family owns 529s, okay? So number 2 here, okay, number 2 of what I think is a very critical point, if you fall into these 2 categories, if you are considering applying to any private colleges, okay, your son or daughter is applying to any private colleges, and you own your home, okay, this is an important variable. Most private colleges, they don't see a difference in your home equity, if you're a homeowner, than what you have in your checking or savings account, okay? If your home's worth $400 and you owe $200 on your home, Boston College is gonna say that's a $200,000 asset, okay? No different than if you said it was a 529 mutual fund, whatever, okay? So that sucks, right? Let's be clear about that. But what can we do to try to minimize how much that's going to negatively impact our EFC? So they're going to ask us on the CSS profile, which is the name of the financial aid application that most of these private schools require. They're going to ask us, what is the value of your home and what do you owe on it? Okay, so it's kind of up to us. And obviously that's kind of an arbitrary gray area type of deal, okay? And I know we have extra handouts for those of you guys that do not have them. So the CSS profile puts the onus on us to come up with the value of our home, and obviously, if we're understanding this, we would like to come up with a value that's on the lower side, right? So how can we do that, right? Give us a tool in order to come up with that. The best tool is going to be the ones that are in your handouts and the one on the screen here. You're going to go to finaid.com, okay? And then when you go to finaid.com, you're going to see a whole bunch of different options. The one we're looking for first is calculators. And ultimately, what we're looking for is this tool called the Housing Index Multiplier. And what this does is it's going to ask us, when did you buy your home? What year did you buy your home? And what did you pay for it originally? And when you enter the answers to those two questions and you hit submit, a dollar amount is going to pop up on the screen. That dollar amount is the lowest value you can use when reporting the value of your home, or if you have other real estate, vacation property, investment property, etc., on the CSS profile. Okay. Basically, what it does is it gives you the national average. See, one thing that one of the, in my opinion, major flaws of this process is that there's no curve in terms of, we live in the Northeast, right? Pretty expensive part of the country relative to the rest of the country. They don't look at our income any differently than they do if we live 20 miles outside of Iowa, right? Or 20 miles outside of Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. So if you make 150 grand in Boston, you know, it's not like you're living in large type of deal, right? I mean, you're famous if you're making that, you know, outside of Des Moines, and they don't account for that. Okay. So this is one place where we can at least kind of mitigate that and take our property outside of just north of Boston and use an average around the country, okay? Now, if you go to use this tool tonight, you're just curious, okay, what's the value that this thing spits out for my house? And it comes up with a value that, for example, is, well, geez, my assessed value is lower than that came up with. You would use your assessed value. The point is, we want to use the lowest value on the CSS profile. This is usually the place that's going to bring us to that, okay? So very, very important, okay? Because usually at a minimum, these schools, these private schools, are going to expect 6% of our home equity to be counted towards the family contribution. So if we have $200,000 in equity, that could impact our EFC $12,000 annually, okay? So if we can shrink that by 100, we're saving ourselves $6,000 a year. So it's an important tool if you're considering private schools and if you own your home, okay? So income, we don't spend much time on income because it's one of these it is what it is type of deal. Okay, line 37, your adjusted gross income on 2016 tax returns, that's what they're going for household income. That was what's called your base income year. For the class of 2018 students, 2016 tax returns is the base income year that they're using to come up with your EFC, okay? What we do want to at least highlight more as an FYI is for student income. If students made below about $6,400 during 2016, it's not factored into the EFC at all, okay? When they made $5,000, not factored in the equation. Once we get above this threshold, it starts to get factored in there at a pretty decent clip. This doesn't mean we encourage our clients to try to have the kids make less money than this. If they're industrious kids, if they're earners, good, go make money. That's going to outweigh how it's going to impact or negatively impact the EFC. We're more talking to families that might own their own business or be self-employed, and they have a creative accountant, and their accountant recommends they pay the kids a salary. They're doing their job, that's great. And that's going to be great for tax purposes. It could kill them for financial aid purposes if they do that during the college years and they want to lower that EFC, okay? Another really critical point, and again, when we do our audits, another really common mistake that we find, families that are self-employed, or they own their own business, sole proprietorship, whatever, it doesn't matter how the business is structured. It's going to ask you on the FAFSA, point blank, what's the net worth of your business assets? Okay, and in my opinion, it's a little bit sneaky in how they ask it because it's kind of presented like that. And we find that most families will come up with their best estimate and put a number there. And let's just say that they don't have any assets in their business. They just have $5,000. He's a consultant. He has his desk and his computer. That's it, $5,000. But what that calculation is going to do is it assumes if you put anything above 0 on the FAFSA, it assumes you have more than 100 employees. So the EFC skyrockets. The takeaway is, if you are self-employed and you have less than 100 employees, you're putting down 0 for business assets on the FAFSA, okay, 0. So again, very, very common mistake because even if you put in a small number, it's going to assume you have a pretty big company, okay? We're not reporting business assets, 0 on the FAFSA. Okay? This is shifting gears a little bit before I let Matt take over for a few minutes here. But it's a question that we thought it was important to share. One, because we're pretty happy we arrived at something we've been working towards for a long time, and two, because it's a question we got all the time. And that is, well, should my kid borrow for college? If they have to borrow, or if they should, and if we need them to, how much? How much is an undergraduate degree? How much is worth it to take on for debt? Okay, now we're pro student loan, we're anti big student loan. So how do we define that? Okay, and the metric that we kind of finally came up with that was the easiest to teach and share, that's proven, that's supported by data and math and everything else, is this right here. So as your sons and your daughters are thinking about what they may want to major in, and of course some of them are unknown, but let's say that some have a basic major and career path, at least as of today. We want to start there. And let's just say it's somebody they want to be an engineer, if we go to the top of the list here. Regardless of what that is, okay, we want to look at, well, what's the national average? What's the national average starting salary for a graduate, an undergraduate degree for someone who's an engineer? Okay, that number's about $63,000. Now, it's a little bit higher here in the Northeast, so but we can be conservative. What that tells us is that for an undergraduate degree, we would not recommend that the student borrow any more than this threshold. Okay, of course, if we would like to borrow less than this, okay, over the course of 4 years, and ideally we will. But once we start getting above this, and how we arrive at this metric, is that what we do is we say, if this is in fact our starting salary for a degree at $63,000, what does that translate to from take-home pay once everything's taken out of their paycheck, et cetera? Now, how does that correlate with the first student loan payment if they borrow this amount? And it's right up to about that amount where the math makes sense. We can still maintain a life and a lifestyle outside of that. At any point we start to get too above that, now just it's not adding up, okay? So this is kind of an easy way as you guys start to make some decisions and start to think big picture-wise and what schools might be worth the return on investment. We would recommend you kind of keep this in your back pocket as a way to kind of gauge what might be affordable for your family and what might be a reasonable amount of debt for your kids to take on. So again, obviously we're shooting to get lower than this in all cases, but this would be the recommendation to try to stay within. Sometimes it's just not possible, but I think it's helpful to at least have the information. Okay. What's that?
This works, right? Okay, I'm going to touch on, for all those first timers, a few myths you'll hear, preconceived notions about filling out financial aid paperwork. Every year we come across these few tidbits here. I'll be pretty direct because the explanation makes sense. We hear a lot of people say, I make too much money. I was told by family friends that why go with the stress and frustration of filling this paperwork out? It's going to amount to nothing. Well, as sticker prices go up, you can make well into the six figures and still get need-based aid. So again, free money on the table that you miss. Opportunities for merit. There are certain schools that if you do not fill the FAFSA, you are disqualified from their merit scholarships. NYU is an example. New York University, great school. Once you miss the FAFSA, you are ineligible for the merit. Grades are too low. Some of you guys, maybe your student was just athlete, skipped through college, did enough, but not the best student. I'm not going to fill out that paperwork. There's no reason to. But the thing is, with need-based aid, it does not touch on academics. It's strictly about your financial snapshot. So again, money left on the table because not filling out the paperwork. Owning a home. As Matt touched on, with the FAFSA, your primary residence is not part of the equation. So again, another reason that money is left on the table. I can always apply next year. You're busy, it's the fall, your students playing sports, going through this whole process. There's a lot of deadlines and every school is different, and for some reason you miss it by a day. Well, once you miss that deadline, schools assume that you're willing to pay full sticker all 4 years. There's a lot more loopholes to jump through as far as filling it out in the future. So the kind of theme there is schools do not want you to fill this paperwork. There's every year millions of dollars left on the table due to just not filling out the FAFSA. Now I'm going to touch on the sources of this financial aid. Where does it come from? It's all said and done. We've applied. We got accepted. We get our financial aid package. Where does this come from? Biggest source is the federal government. This comes in three forms: grants, work study, and loans. Grants, Pell Grant, SEOG grant, you'll see a lot out there. Those are geared towards high need, low EFC families. You are eligible once you fill out the FAFSA. College work study. You'll see a box on filling out the forms about participating in work study. We highly recommend this. It's a great opportunity to make money, see different parts of the school. Examples of this are you're in the library checking IDs, you're in the rec hall checking IDs, you're meeting new people, getting some work done, earning some cash used towards books, supplies, tuition if need be. A lot of parents get reservations about, my freshman first year, balancing academics, leaving the nest, trying to make friends. Why would I ever, put work on his plate? Well, Matt and I both played football in college. We both still found time to participate in work study. And it's called work study for a reason, because you're working, but the job is usually pretty easy, where you're also studying at the same time. You bring your laptop, you bring your books. Another quick thing here, if as far as telling your kid, hey, you got too much to do, we're not going to participate here, not much studying gets done in the dorms. So, make sure they make use of this. Oh, go back to that, sorry. And, the big one, the loans. We have direct loans, subsidized, unsubsidized. Those are the first ones usually seen on the aid packages. These are the best out there, best rates, easily accessible. Subsidized is that buzzword, no interest until 6 months after graduation. So free money doesn't accrue till after 6 months. Ideally, when your student has a job. And then plus is the one you'll see after. That is for the parents. Again, competitive rates, easily accessible. But the reason for these slides is to get used to, familiar with these loans you'll see. There's a lot of loans out there. Don't simply get your package and sign the dotted line and say, that's done. You have the state government, another big loan program. Yes? Well, the eligibility, it comes down to your finances. Subsidized is geared a little more low EFC families, but you'll know once you fill the paperwork. Subsidized interest does accrue. A lot of families that don't get need-based aid, we recommend taking out unsubsidized loans still, because you can pay them over there's a $27,000 limit to these loans, $5,500, $6,500, $7,500, $7,500. If you were to take out unsubsidized loans, you don't need to, take them out, pay them on time, and your son or daughter graduates with established credit. Great way to get ahead. So on the state programs at Mass, you'll hear MIFA, that's the program here. Competitive rates. You can go online to see what you're eligible for. That can be used in the state of Mass if your kid attends school here. You also use out of state. You can also shop other state programs. For example, Vermont has the VSAC, Jersey has HESA, Rhode Island RISLA. So again, different way to shop around for loans, different rates, different structure. Some might fit your family needs better. And then the biggest one here that's always overlooked, and families don't really attack this the right way, is the colleges themselves. I mean, these are businesses. They might say nonprofit, but there's a reason that Harvard has $40 billion in their endowment. Majority of schools, hundreds of millions you hear in your student tours, about these marvelous endowments they have. Well, how do we get a piece of that pie? There's kind of a two-pronged attack here. We create competition. We find schools where your son or daughter is in that top 25th percentile, so they're in demand. And then we find schools that will compete with each other for that student. A lot of parents will say, oh, my son and daughter's favorite school is this school. We applied, got X package, and that's it. Well, maybe their second or third, weren't schools that they loved or wanted to go to, but hey, if they compete directly with that first school, we're going to show them those packages too. And if your son or daughter fits that profile of that school, they will bend a bit. They will try to match other packages. They want students. They want that product. A good way to find this competition is simple things. Yes? I was going to say, so you could actually show them the aid packages. And a way to find competitive schools is simple things like look at their football schedule, that athletic conference they're in. Yeah, I mean, so we always say, apply to several schools and lever them against each other. If your top school is Tufts and they give you a package and Bates or Colby gives you better, I mean, tell Tufts that. See if they bend, see if they're willing to, it doesn't hurt. I mean, these are simple things that, if it adds up to a couple thousand per year times 4, that's a lot of money. And then, so what about those families out there that don't qualify for need? Where's our value? What can we do? This is where merit aid comes into play. So merit aid is almost a scholarship opportunity. The Ivies, the NESCACs, Patriot League do not give merit aid. These are where those other private schools compete with those elite colleges. These are for academics, athletic achievements, artistic ability, those kind of things. And the attack here is the same way. Let's find schools that are generous with merit, do some research online, find schools that your son or daughter fits that top 25th percentile, and find schools that compete. This is even more, it happens all the time. I deal with a lot of student athletes. The kid will be recruited by a school, accepted, and I'll always tell them, hey, listen, go to that conference, find a few other schools that compete, and they're definitely going to bend with merit aid to get you there. They want you as a student. They want to compete. We've seen clients upwards of $5, $10, $15, $20,000 packages, strictly by merit. Some schools are grid-based, based on GPA and testing. Some are, like I said, your artistic profile, and some are for recruited athletes. Another way to do this whole thing is just strictly looking at value. You have that sticker price, $30,000 to upwards of $80,000, as Matt said. Let's just do our research. Let's move that filter from 70 down to 50 and see what pops up, some of the top schools. And over a 4-year period, the number is staggering what you can save. I mean, there's a lot of kids that go to undergraduate schools, get great degrees, go on to get a business degree or a graduate degree, and if you save that money in the first 4 years, it certainly helps down the road. Schools that come up with value, like there's the SUNY schools in New York, Binghamton. I mean, there's schools like JMU, James Madison, that's $38,000. There's schools, again, if you do your research, move that filter a bit, a lot of schools that are household names will pop up. Another growing, there's the honors program, another thing that's growing. We did some research on our end. You think of IBs from the Northeast. There's a lot of kids that go to honors programs, Maryland, Arizona State, some of the top tier programs that, pay that lower 50 range, but it still looks great when you apply to graduate degree schools. I mean, they still have similar type chances to those $70,000 plus schools. So again, the goal here is to attack these colleges as a way of creating leverage, find schools where your students in demand, and understand the big picture of the 4 years, which will pop up here as one quick example, pretty simple example. Just strictly same family, same EFC, $80,000, no need family, and just simply by looking at the sticker prices over a 4-year period, the money saved. Cornell versus JMU, $300,000 versus $152,000. Is Cornell a better school, household name, Ivy? Yeah, I mean, probably. Is it $148,000 better? Some could argue both ways in that one.
Yeah, I think the point is, the takeaway there is that I think we've seen too many people, again, get a little bit too caught up in the name brand sometimes. Not that they're not all tremendous schools, but especially if we're thinking about grad school, there's more than one way to get to the end result that everybody's looking for. And like that study Matt was referring to, basically found that some of the top honors colleges, which are like colleges within colleges at flagship state universities, right? Like UMass has a great one. He mentioned 2 of the best ones in the country, which is Maryland and Arizona State. And we looked at what were their acceptance rates into law school, med school, and then MBA programs. And they would have finished right in the middle of the Ivy Leagues in terms of acceptance rates. And if we're a family that's not getting financial aid, well, that's costing us about $30,000 less a year, in some cases more. So again, we're not saying that there's never a time where paying a premium for an education is worth it, but I think it makes sense to at least look at the return on the investment and think outside the box a little bit. That's kind of the takeaway. So quickly, I want to talk about some things, again, kind of mistakes that we've seen that we want to make sure you guys don't do the same thing. Quickly from a tax standpoint, if you have a kid in college full-time and your adjusted gross income, if you're a married couple, is below $160,000, you're eligible for a $2,500 tax credit, okay? Some people just miss it, so don't miss it, okay? It's $2,500 a year per kid. Okay, if it's a single-parent household, it's phased out between $80,000 and $90,000 adjusted gross income. Here's why most people miss it. So the IRS has it, right? They have this tax credit, but they don't really want everybody to use it. So here's what they do. So let's just say I'm a family, my adjusted gross income is $140,000. So I'm below this threshold. My kid went off to college, so I should get a $2,500 tax credit, right? But I didn't get it. Well, why not? Well, theoretically, their cost, the bill for college year 1 was $30,000, okay? Well, we had saved up 50 grand in a 529. So we did the obvious thing. We paid that first bill, 30 grand from the 529, right? And we're done for that year. But we didn't get the tax credit. Why not? Because $4,000 has to come from any other source aside from a 529 in order to get the tax credit, okay? One of these weird things that most people that fall into this scenario miss, okay? Which of course is by design. We don't want you guys to miss that. So in that scenario, you would pay $26,000 out of the 529, and then $4,000 from anywhere else, and then again, that allows us to take advantage of this tax credit, okay? So a weird little thing, but we've even had CPAs that have missed that, okay? So if I make over 180 grand, does that mean I'm not eligible for this $2,500 tax credit? Not necessarily. There's still ways that we can capture it within the family. And this is, you know, I could spend a whole night kind of doing a lesson plan on these types of things, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but I'll plant seeds for those of you that fall into this category. And you can kind of bring these up and talk about them with your CPA. But we have been able to get creative and capture it in other ways, primarily through the student, okay? So if the student files a tax return, shows earned income, and claims themselves, they may be able to take advantage of this $2,500 tax credit. And some of the ways that we've done it is if a family owns their own business or they're self-employed, this is a scenario where we would encourage them to pay the kids a salary, have the business write-off, take advantage of the tax credit. Now, I mentioned earlier you shouldn't do that. Well, you shouldn't do that if you're going to be eligible for need-based financial aid. But in this would be an example of where we weren't interested in or we weren't going to get need-based financial aid, okay? We've also seen families that have other properties do it by making their kids a property manager, okay, and paying them for that. And again, being able to capture the tax credit through that. So the takeaway is that regardless of what our income is, we may be able to get creative in capturing this tax credit, which, you know, we're not moving mountains, but it's 10 grand over 4 years, okay? And if we have multiple kids, it's 10 grand times however many kids we have. So completing this process itself, and don't worry, I'm like, God bless you guys for still even being here. We're coming on home stretch here, fourth quarter, okay? More than the fourth quarter, halfway through the fourth quarter. So how do we complete this process, okay? We made it crystal clear. Hopefully every single college requires a FAFSA. There's no exceptions. We try to stay away from scare tactics, and I will contradict myself right now when it comes to deadlines. Okay, you do not want to miss deadlines. They will give you less money than you are otherwise entitled to in most cases if you miss it by a day, if you miss it by an hour. Okay, we had a horror story of a scenario last year, and we'll probably be telling this for many years because this was right up there with you know, in 12 years of doing this is probably the most extreme one. But we had somebody approached us after the fact. They weren't working with us early in the process. They approached us in the spring towards the end, and they said, hey, can you help us out? And I said, yeah, probably. And the deal is that they had a mixed household family, you know, so second marriage for each parent and kind of a Brady Bunch situation, 3 seniors at once, so chaotic household, right? And stepdad was in charge. His deal was, right, we had a division of labor in the house to try to get everything done. Stepdad was in charge of the financial aid deal, financial aid applications for each of the kids, and they were each applying to 10 schools. And lo and behold, something slipped through the cracks. Holy Cross didn't get the FAFSA on the profile on time. He realized it the next day. Oh boy, you know, and got everything over to them, and then the next day. The end result was, this is a nice Jesuit school, right? Not only did they get $0 in financial aid, and they would have been eligible for a bunch. They were eligible for a bunch of financial aid. In year 1, they said you're not going to get anything for all 4 years, okay? Because you missed the deadline. Now, this is a little bit extreme. I would say most schools would be more, you know, not as nasty as they were, but that's not like that's not made up. You know, it's a real story. So it was a happy ending. She went somewhere else. She went down to Clemson. She's gonna have a blast and a good experience. But it was an absolute nightmare for, you know, months really. Don't give these guys excuses to give you less money. As you guys will see if you haven't already, the process is not streamlined. So if you apply to 8 schools, you're going to have these guys require just the FAFSA. That's everyone, right? These guys also require the CSS profile. These guys require a 3rd institutional application. Here's this due date. Here's that due date. We're applying early here. We're applying regular decision there. A lot of moving parts. So as this list comes to fruition, it's your responsibility. These colleges are not going to be proactive. Okay, it's your responsibility to find out what do they require and when is it due. Okay, you need to go out of your way. You need to go on each of these financial aid websites and say, okay, we decided we're definitely applying to Assumption. What do they require? When's it due? We're applying early action to St. Anselm's. What do they need? When is it due? Okay, the onus of that is on you. One more, please. So the CSS profile, right? The FAFSA, you've all heard of the FAFSA. Has anybody ever done a CSS profile? Right, that makes the FAFSA seem like a blast, right? Like I'd do it for fun compared to the CSS profile. These are the private schools. These guys are very invasive, very thorough. There's several hundred questions on this form. Okay, they're not going to leave any details, up to chance. Okay, $25 they charge you for the first school you send it to. $16 for each one thereafter. This is the form that's asking about your home equity. Again, the FAFSA does not, so we do not include it. It's completed through your students, your sons and your daughters' college board account. Okay, and again, same as the FAFSA, this is not accessible until October 1st, until Sunday. The earliest anything will be due is November 1st. That is the earliest deadline in the country, and that's only in a very small percentage of schools, and only if you apply early action and early decision. So chances are most of you will have at least 1 month to complete all the applications. Okay. You also don't have to complete them in one sitting. Okay, I think that's kind of a common misconception too. You can make a nice little weekend out of it. Okay. Quickly here, I want to share another anecdote with you here because I think it's important. We pick on these guys a little bit. Obviously, tremendous colleges, some of the best in the world. UPenn's kind of, our kind of nemesis. Not as an institution, just in terms of how they run their business, because they have this third, just torturous financial aid application, and we have a good relationship with one of the assistant directors there that we kind of backed into a corner 2 years ago and said, what is the story, with this third application? You're asking us these questions for a third time. I mean, what's the deal here? And he said, well, we were, profits weren't up to where kind of we wanted them, the powers that be wanted them, okay, if you can believe that, right? I can't believe that. But they said, hey, so let's get creative here, okay? And so what they came up with is let's make this financial aid application process just a real bear. Like, let's make this thing a real bear, because I'm willing to bet if we do that, there's just going to be a percentage of families and parents that they're going to be halfway through it, and then they're going to be, you know what, are we even going to get anything anyways? Forget it, I'm out, okay? Thereby guaranteeing they get $0. Guess what? Phenomenal business decision. Margins went up 15%, okay? So by design, right, and then, of course, they've shared that strategy with some of their colleagues. By design, they're getting people to drop out of the process that otherwise would have received some aid, okay, just by making it so difficult. We share that just to make sure that as you're getting, kind of hitting a wall, just kind of power through here, just get through this process. Yes, it can be a bear, but you guys need it more than these guys do, I promise, okay? Okay, what if I'm in a situation where we're a two-household family, divorced or separated situation? What do we do in that scenario? Well, these colleges, they don't see a distinction between a divorced family and a separated family so long as there's two households and the parents do not file jointly, okay? So so long as, we check those two boxes, they don't care if it's an actual divorce or a informal separation, okay? The schools that only require the FAFSA, so in most cases state schools, the only information that goes on the FAFSA is that of the custodial parent, okay? So if the student lives with mom, only mom's information goes on the FAFSA. It's like dad doesn't exist, okay? In that scenario, if mom's remarried, well, now the step-parent is a custodial parent, okay? And if they file together, their combined information will go on the FAFSA, okay? Still as if biological dad doesn't exist, okay? Excuse me. Private schools, right? Do you get the feel for private schools, right? Pretty thorough people. They're going to want everybody's information, right? In their dream, perfect world, both parents are remarried, okay? So they can look at 4 incomes, 4 assets, and judge you guys accordingly. But this is a scenario where if you are divorced or separated and each parent lives in the vicinity of Swampscott and the student spends some time at each household, you can take liberties with who the custodial parent is on the financial aid applications, and you should. It doesn't matter who claims the student as an exemption. Okay, that's not a pre-qualifier for who can be the custodial parent on the financial aid applications. Yep. If you call in a college, they're going to tell you who the student lives with 51% of the time or more. Okay, so if we want to be really careful, we're like, make sure the kid sleeps one more night at that particular household. We don't want to be really careful, so we don't really care. But that's what they would tell you is the official criteria. But in terms of if we wanted to get really creative, they would have to reasonably be able to drive themselves or get driven to the high school every day to go to school. You know, so if the non-custodial parent lives in Western Mass, it's not, we're probably, you know, grasping at straws here. Give it a shot, but okay. Go ahead. So I want to quickly show you 2 case studies before we cut you loose. And again, you guys are better students than your kids. So this is one from last year where we had an exceptional student, and it was one of these deals where I think they actually said as much. They're pretty transparent. We're like, listen, we're going to work with you guys, but I'm really hiring you because I get a really smart kid. He's dying to go to Amherst College, but I just want you to tell him that we can't afford to go there, so he can't apply. Okay, that was kind of the premise, because they're looking at $75,000, going, forget it. You know, we got a pretty modest income, really no savings. You know, that's not even something we can talk about. It kills us to say we can't go to the school that you could probably get into, as competitive as it is. Let's just go to UMass. We'll worry about UMass. Not that it's going to be easy, but we'll figure out a way to make that happen. Okay, we said, well, we're not going to do that because Amherst College is incredible with need-based financial aid. So let's kind of see how this thing plays out. So that's what we did. So if we go back to that first calculation, right, cost of attendance minus the EFC equals need. So our EFC is the same at each school, and we deduct that from the cost of attendance. At UMass, we're pretty close. We demonstrate $8,000 worth of need, whereas we have this gigantic spread at Amherst. Okay, $55,000 difference between our EFC and their cost of attendance. Well, UMass Amherst says, okay, well, you're eligible for $8,000 worth of need. Oh, that was cool. I need some work on this. What do I do? Fancy schmancy, guys. Oh. Well, so they're going to say, all right, I was on by design. They're not going to meet 100% of need. I'm not picking on UMass. That is most state schools, okay? Most state schools, all state schools, no state schools meet 100% of need, okay? This is kind of an average for a lot of them, 60%. So we want to know what percentage of need these colleges are meeting, right, that we're applying to. So first we want to know what percentage of need do you meet, but equally as important, we need to know how do they meet need, because there's 2 ways they meet need. The first is this is what we love to see, gift aid. That's free money, grant scholarships coming out of their pocket, not ours, money right off the top, okay? This other type of self-help, like, you know, that sounds kind of fun too, self-help financial aid, right? But that's a sexy term for loans, okay? They call it financial aid, it's loans. So they're going to give us this money, but we're going to have to give it back plus points. Obviously not as attractive, okay? There might be some very good loans, advantageous loans, but loans, okay? So our all-in at UMass, well, first we got to pay our original EFC at $20,000. Then we got to pay the amount that they don't cover, another $3,000. Our net is $23,000. Well, we said Amherst was incredible with need-based aid. What's that mean? Well, it means that they meet 100%. They meet it all in gift aid. So we got to pay our EFC. They're going to take care of the difference, okay? So the $70,000 school or $75,000 school ends up being about $3,000 less annually than the $28,000 school, okay? So there's a few big takeaways here. Number one is do not take a school off the list because of what it appears to cost on the surface, okay? For most families, for most of you in the room, how affordable or not affordable a particular college is, the third most important variable in dictating that is the sticker price, the cost. The 2 more important ones are, number one, what is your EFC, right? And what can we do to drive that thing down? And then what percentage of need are these colleges meeting and how are they meeting it, okay? If this is a college classroom and I ask you what you pay to go here, I'm going to get a different answer from everybody in the room, okay? So it's a really, really important concept to keep in mind that, again, we don't find is always common knowledge. Lastly, our last case study before I get to my very last point, okay, is, but I'm a family that's not getting any need-based financial aid. There's nothing fancy we can do. We're not getting need-based financial aid. And we talked about merit in kind of making some of these decisions and return on investment. And I think it's helpful to just see these numbers, because this was a family for last year. Again, incredible student, and they had 8 colleges on their list originally. It was 4 Ivy League schools and 4 NESCAC schools. So NESCACs being, you know, the Williams, Amherst, Tufts, Bowdoin. And they said, you know, but our kid's, you know, pretty special, and she was. But, you know, they're going to get she can get merit-based aid somewhere. We said, no, she's not. Not one of these colleges give merit-based aid. And they had a very high EFC, okay, of 70,000, but they weren't ready to start cutting checks for 70,000, nor could they afford to, okay? So we got to hedge our bets here. We got to come up with, try to find some other great schools. She was an engineering student. You know, so Colgate was kind of the first choice initially. She loved that engineering program. She got in. Case Western, okay, that's one we identified that, you know, we make fun of it because it's in the Midwest out here, okay? You know, we don't like the Midwest when we live in the college capital of the world, but it's a great school. You know, great engineering school. They give merit money, okay, especially the kids applying from the Northeast. So they came up with 30 grand off a sticker price that was already just a little bit lower. So our net at Case Western is 35 grand a year, versus, which is virtually half, right? It almost worked out exactly like this. We cleaned up the numbers a little bit, but about half of Colgate, okay? So over the course of 4 years, we're talking about a $140,000 investment versus a $280,000 investment. Is Colgate better than Case Western? Probably. Is it $140,000 better? I don't think so. You know, and I think the statistics would back that up as well. So that's why especially we want to make sure we hedge our bets and have some of these types of options. Even if we end up at this school, let's make sure we're in a position to make a hard decision. We'll go on the last slide there. So lastly, right, maybe not. No, whatever. So you guys have at the end of your packets here what an actual financial aid award looks like, right? So this is one from, I don't know what school this is, RPI, right? So this is what's going to happen in a couple months. You guys are going to get these awards. You've been accepted to our college. Here's what we're offering, right? And here's how much we cost, and we're giving you this amount in scholarships and you know, scholarships and the subsidized and unsubsidized loans, et cetera, okay? And then there's some fine print there, but nowhere, right? We've never seen an award anywhere that said at the bottom, like, hey, here's my phone number. I'm Larry Chambers, the director, and if this isn't enough money, just give us a shout, okay? We're waiting for it. Maybe this year's the year. But we talked about the fact these are businesses, huge businesses, right? They're nonprofit organizations. That just means they don't pay taxes, okay? These are very, very well-run, multi-billion-dollar corporations is what they are. So negotiations is part of doing business. You want to take advantage of that. You want to know that as a consumer. So we work very closely with a lot of financial aid counselors. The one we're closest with is at least I'm closest with. He's the assistant director at MIT, and he's a great resource for us, but he's been at a lot of different schools, so he's been in a lot of different formulas, and so that's been helpful. So we say, hey, listen, Ryan, we're at the end of the presentation. Give us we're really losing people tonight. We're really losing people, okay? Give us 5 quick bullet points we can send them home with so that when these people get their awards, they know how to go back to your school and other schools, okay? First one is, Ryan makes crystal clear, maybe this is apparent, maybe it's not. The financial aid people have really no contact with the admissions people, meaning they don't see your essay, they don't see the interview, they don't see the extracurriculars, they know nothing about your kid, they know nothing about your family. They know what's come through on the black and white FAFSA and financial aid awards. They work for that business, it's their job to make it a profitable operation, okay? So he always talks about the fact that, of course, it's hard to maybe not give the most generous award. It's a very not human process. What makes my job very hard is when I get on the phone and I talk to mom or I talk to dad or I talk to the student to say, hey, listen, it was the best day of our lives when we got accepted into a school that was kind of an 18-year body of work, followed by 2 weeks later is the worst day of our lives when you know, my son, my daughter made this thing happen and I'm going to have to tell them that they can't go because the money's not there. You know, and you know, I did my due diligence, Ryan, and I've been crunching numbers. I've been up at night, and I figured if you guys can come up with 10 grand more, we're gonna figure out a way to make this work. Okay, give him a real number. Okay, we need to add a human element to it, and then we need to give him a real number. Matt talked about having other offers, right? Hey, listen, we'd hate to, you know, we'd hate to go to schools B or C. And we wish we didn't have to consider them, but we do. So what I did was I scanned you those financial aid awards. You'll see in your email, I scanned you the 2 awards that are $12,000 and $10,000 more. If we can't get at least close, we don't have a choice, unfortunately. You know, that might be an empty threat, but it doesn't matter. You know, we're going to use it. The fourth one here is the one that's a little bit more complex, the one that's a little less common knowledge. Most of these private schools in particular, some publics, most of the private schools are going to ask for your tax returns. It's not to verify what you put on the financial aid applications because they want to take a look at your deductions. They want to look at your write-offs. And we've watched them do this to just get an example, show me an example of what you're talking about. So, well, this guy, he's a landscaper and he's a plower in the winter, so he wrote off his pickup truck. Excuse me, for $6,000. And IRS didn't have a problem with it. Kind of makes sense given what he does for a living. But we just made an assumption that he uses that recreationally, picks up his kids from school with that. So we didn't count that right off for $6,000. So when we don't count it, now it's $6,000 of untaxed income. So it bumped up their EFC by $4,000 and reduced their grant by $2,000. Okay, they're taking some serious liberties here. If you call a financial aid office and you ask to talk to your financial aid counselor and there was one assigned to you regardless of how big the school is, okay, I don't care if we're talking about Ohio State, okay, they are obligated to tell you, because these are the two questions you're going to ask, and they're not going to get to ask these two questions very often, only by the people that get in front of us. Can you walk me through dollar for dollar how you came up with my family's EFC, A? And B, can you tell me if you did not count any of the deductions or tax write-offs that the IRS allowed? Okay, they're obligated to answer that truthfully, and I can promise you, if they're say, well, we didn't count such and such a deduction, you have a unbelievably strong, I would go so far as to say almost guaranteed chance of having a successful appeal. Okay, they're not getting that question very often. Okay, last one, good old-fashioned persistence. Right, we got an office just right over in Salem here, and then we have one just south of New York City in Cranford, New Jersey. And if we have, when we have kind of some victories and some voicemails that we think are especially good, we save them because they're, again, kind of trophies and they're funny to listen to. So one of the recent one was our buddy Matt here. Was someone, I think they were calling from Northeastern. They said, yeah, this message is from Matt Frotto, and just calling to let you know we are going to be able to come up with another $7,000. We're just asking in return that you never call this office again, okay? It's just, again, nobody's being a jerk, right? We're not recommending that. It's just persistence, right? If you're a jerk, they're going to say, well, I don't want to deal with this guy or this mom for 4 years. But just good old, if they can shut you up with money, we all win. So, first of all, give yourselves a round of applause for still being here. You guys are good parents. You guys care. Honestly, I'd be gone. Having said that, you're not done. We have at the very back, you can just rip off. This is our evaluation form, okay? You can do it lazy. It does not have to be thorough, but please do it. Please give it to myself. Jerry's at the back there, and she'll tell you this is your ticket out of the building. Give it to us. If anybody wants a free consultation, you'll see down the bottom, that's what we offer. Here's what it entails. You can either come into the office in Salem or set it up via phone. Doesn't matter. We'll get the same thing accomplished. Takes about 20 minutes. What we're going to do in that is we're going to have some questions for you. Based on those questions, we're going to say, here's what your EFC is going to be. And based on the colleges you guys are considering, this is what they're going to give you, for better or for worse. And, sometimes we're able to identify right away what are some things we can do to get this EFC down, or are you guys missing some schools that seem to be a little bit more generous than the ones that are currently on the list. And obviously, it'll give us a chance to answer any particular questions that you guys have. So certainly do not feel obligated, but it's my sincere belief that it's a pretty good place to start the process. And again, for better or for worse, kind of at least know where you stand and what direction we think it makes for you to head in. So again, thanks for your patience. Emily won't listen to me that to do 2 nights in one is just suicide. But you guys are good sports. And we wish you luck either way. All right, guys? Thank you very much.